Hi, good morning. My name is Scott Forcino. I'm an associate broker with Real Brokerage based in New York, New York. I have with me today Kevyn Wagner, a friend, a resident of Palm Beach County, and with Ideal Mortgage Solutions. There's a lot to talk about. The market has shifted. This is February 2023. Where did January even go? But now we're in the spring market, and there's many movements and shifts in this market. We want to hear from Kevyn the best way to serve clients, work with agents, and some unique strategies he has to make a big impact on transactions and really help buyers and sellers. Good morning, Kevyn.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. I know that there's so much going on in the market, and want to hear what you're doing and what you think your role is and what's information that buyers should have.
Gotcha. Good. Fire away. I'm ready to answer some questions.
So, people always say the R word. What are the rates? I know that's not everything, but that's the curious number they want.
So the rates on average, check it every day, and obviously they move every day, but they've come back to about a mid-level of about 6.5 or so. And we've seen that hold steady for about the last, I would say, probably week. Prior to that, we had a little bump where we got just slightly into the 5s. But since then, it's moved back up to the mid-6s, and it's pretty much held. And we'll likely probably hold there for a while until we get some big economic news or something that could move the market.
But, these numbers are being thrown around, 6.5, 5.75. Let's just give a person who's going to write a check at the beginning of every month on a $400,000 loan, which is about average in your area. Am I correct? About average?
Yeah, it's about average. Yeah. About
average. So if a rate is 5.25 versus 6.5, a 1.25 difference on 400,000. What is the monthly difference? What is a person paying different or more?
Well, let me give you an idea. I actually ran a scenario based on 300,000, and the difference between, say, a point to a point and a half is probably about $350 a month.
Wow.
So it's a fairly significant amount, and you take that over a 30-year period, even though no one statistically holds their loans that long. It's a significant amount of money. And for a lot of people, whether we see it, and this is important, whether, you and I or the people watching this video see that as, it's only $350 a month, that could make the difference in whether somebody qualifies for the mortgage or doesn't qualify for the mortgage, right? Because that could take that debt ratio, say from, a 36% up to a 40 or 42, and all of a sudden our automated underwriting systems say, no, we can't do it. We don't get that approval anymore. So we need to think of it in bigger terms rather than dollars. Is how does it affect the overall scenario of the loan?
And when you say DTI, that's debt to income, and I think buyers who see this may realize that. How does that work? A part of their monthly income is considered against what their mortgage and their normal costs are per month?
Correct. So with the mortgage, we look at two separate ratios, right? What we call the front end and the back end. So the front end is we're taking your gross, not your net, but your gross income, and we divide it by what the entire housing payment would be. And that entire housing payment encompasses your principal and interest, taxes, insurance, which is becoming a problem here in Florida as well, and any HOA fees. So, we take the gross income divided by 12. We'll say your gross income is $2,500 a month. Your total housing payment is going to be, $1,500 a month. That gives you a certain housing ratio. And those things are generally restricted to, let's say, even the most generous, right, which is FHA, they'll allow us to use about 45% of your annual gross income towards your housing payment. Then we have on the other side, the back end ratio. So the back end ratio encompasses both the housing ratio that we just talked about, plus any other debt that shows up on your credit report, student loans, credit cards, card payments, that sort of thing. And even in the most generous of circumstances, you're pretty much capped with FHA, say at 55, 56%, something like that. Conforming, you'll never get above.
And that doesn't give you much room for entertainment and new clothes and traveling and, living the way most people want to try to live.
That's exactly right. And remember, we're qualifying you on your gross, not your net, because the reason Fannie Mae does that primarily is because your gross is what's going to be most steady throughout the years. So if we did it on your net, people would say, well, we're going to qualify on our net, and they would find all kinds of deductions, drop different things, so they would end up netting more. So Fannie Mae says across the board, FHA, everything, just use the gross, because that's going to be what's most consistent.
Okay, but let's say that. So that means you have a W-2 employee, and when you use the net, you're probably talking about 75, 85.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, if they max out their ratios. See, and it depends on what bracket you're in. So if you're in, you're trying to, the lower end bracket, you're trying to find something for, in this market, say 300,000, you're going to max out that debt ratio. Not really what your true debt ratio is when you deduct out expenses, car, gas for the car insurance, things that actually costs. So,
and that doesn't include your things, your creature comforts, your cable, your things that you may need for work, but all the thought to be, luxuries that become a little bit too common.
Yeah, we don't even consider that. And those rules
right
have not changed. Like I said, I've been licensed since '92, and it's always been the same way. So when you look at the reality of it, if you're maxing out at 57%, by the time you really look at it on your net, you're more like 75, 80% of your money.
And I don't even think that's true of people maxing out. What if your ratios are 25, 35? You're still getting to be 60, 70% of the net real numbers.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
People don't consider that.
That's why we try to remind people, it's like, hey, even though you qualify, can you really afford, consider that excuse me, that you're not going to be able to, go out to dinner every night or drive the big, $70,000 SUV or something like that.
So how do you relate that to how do you relate that to the home buyer who's got stars in their eyes? And how do you relate that to the realtors that definitely, as we know, and I'm one of them, I'm with big companies and great friends that really don't take part in this analysis, that they're kind of fed the result?
Because I talked to them about what, as I just explained to you, I'm like, look, this is, even though we're qualifying you on your gross, you live on your net. So think about what you're taking home. And then sometimes we'll do an analysis, because I can look on the pay stubs and I can see what their net is, because that's part of the document set that we, that we gather at the beginning. And, just things that they have to think about. What sacrifices might you have to make? And, what does your future look like? Do you see anything in your industry that could maybe warn you that your income might be declining? So we don't ever want to put somebody in a position to fail. And unfortunately, I've been getting a lot of calls, a few a week at least, now. People are getting notices. Hey, your mortgage is going up. I get paid, the payments are going up $1,000 a month. And we start to dig down into what it actually is. And it's their escrow accounts going up, their insurance and their taxes.
Right.
And, and it's like, we can't account for that when we do the loan, because we don't know, right? We know based off of what we have. What are the taxes today? What is the insurance today? Well, in the last, 6 months to a year, the insurance industry in Florida has been turned upside down. So premiums that were, $3,000 a year are now $7,000 or $8,000 or $12,000 a year in some case.
If the industry is aware of that, I mean, I've heard of just what you're saying, where people have like a reverse sticker shock, where Ma and Pa Kettle bought the house in Florida by you in 2000 for $150. Now it's $400. Mm-hmm. So the taxes are usually low. Then they get the reassessed. The insurance with the, hurricane damage in Florida overall has doubled. So aren't we setting ourselves up for failure, aware of it's going to go up? Plus the, normal things like groceries and energy. In the Northeast, people are getting double the bill. Friends of mine are telling me they have $1,500 a month, and it's been a record warm winter in New England and the Northeast.
Is that right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, doubles and food. So really, if you're writing a loan today and you're on the edge, and I don't think that the banks imagine any of these costs are going down. So aren't we really setting ourselves up for failure?
Well, you have to, let's just say that's why it's important to work with an experienced loan officer, because there are places you can go within the tax collector's site. I know at least in Palm Beach County, where we can estimate, hey, what are the taxes going to be based off of the sales price? And it'll kind of show you. but none of that is taken into consideration when qualifying for the loan, because you have to have, I would assume, at the federal level, you have to have one policy that applies to everybody equally. And, otherwise which becomes dangerous, it becomes an opinion, right? So rather than dealing with black and white math, these are the numbers. Well, we think the taxes are going to go up, or we think the insurance is going to go up. And then you're going to get an argument from the borrowers or whoever saying, no, it's not, it's going to be steady. But as long as you're made aware of it in the beginning, don't be surprised when it comes. And that's when I tell them.
But that brings up the point I've always said, that I've objected to people looking at houses as investments, because you don't live in your investment. So now it's okay to love a car where for your term loan it's going to be that number. It's okay to make an emotional purchase. I love that car. It's going to be $550 a month. Okay, we know that. But to love something that you're not sure of the cost, that's where your brain and your heart really meet, and you want it because it's in a great location and close to school, and you're near your folks, and it's all been remodeled, versus that house is old appliances. So Imagine matching up such an emotional reaction to something of a financial safe investment. They never meet anywhere else but in housing.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, nobody loves Apple stock. If it makes sense, it makes sense.
Right. But you can only look at the present. That's the thing, is you can't look into a crystal ball and hope that, taxes stay steady or insurance stays steady, that sort of thing. But you're right. It's a major emotional purchase. You live in it. But the cost of ownership can change.
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous thing. We're just talking about professional messages here. That's you to your referral partners. That's you to your clients and prospects. And, be careful, because, I'm hearing about that. A friend of mine is a New York lawyer telling me that he's at people where, hey, you know what, we could afford it. Now it's really tight. Going to the grocery store, you can't get out without $200. I mean, and I look at it, what do I get?
Right.
What do we get? So there's that. So,
and it's interesting too, because this is a phenomenon that has happened really more so in the last 2 years than in the last 20. Right. Because the market's been fairly steady, with the exception of, like 03 to 08. But you get a steady 2 to 3%, appreciation, 5%, some markets, where the taxes might go up, even with a homestead protection in Florida. The taxes might go up $300 a year, $200 to $400, something like that. That might make, a $25 a month difference or something in your payment. But when you're buying a house for $800,000 that the prior owner bought just 4 or 5 years ago for $300,000, that's going to be whack. That's going to be a hit to the taxes, and that's why we're getting the phone calls.
Right?
It's huge difference. And Palm Beach County's licking their chops, right? They're saying, "Hey, look at all this extra tax revenue we've got now." So,
of course, and now we have another micro dose of that, because it's so emotional, and then you have the notion of scarcity, and then fewer buyers. But how in the world is Mr. and Mrs. Family homeowner going to leave a 2.75 or 3.25 interest rate that they got in 2021 and they bragged about to their friends? They're going to double their interest rate. I mean, don't you see that that's almost impossible to happen?
It is almost impossible. And that's what's going on. And that's why the market right now is, as you see, stagnant. That's why sales are down. That's why, inventory is starting to tick up just a little bit. I've got some charts to illustrate that if we need it. But that is part of the problem, is they don't want to leave that. But a smart listing agent will go, well, listen, let's offer seller financing, where you can do something called, and this is a whole different video, but where you can get into subject to, and that could be the appeasement of trying to market that property, is where you can come in and offer the seller, hey, take over my mortgage. And it's called subject to. Is an investor trick we used to use all the time. And they would be able to say, hey, buy this house with this 2.75% interest rate on it. So that's a marketing strategy that a listing agent could offer as well for a
Now,
house.
tell me about that, because that, in my knowledge, that would be like an assumable loan. Is that what you're talking about?
Kind of, sort of, but you don't actually assume it through the bank. So what happens is, and I bought a primary, I bought a big, beautiful home up in Charlotte this way. I have a couple that's going through divorce. They couldn't afford it. They couldn't get any buyers because it was right after the crash in '08. But what I was able to do is to come in, take over their mortgage. You give them some cash up front. It might be 10,000, it might be 30, whatever it happens to be. They're not going to get all of their equity out of it, but you're going to write them a check, at closing, a legal closing with an attorney. The attorney then does what's called a wraparound mortgage, right? So it then becomes superior to the first mortgage lien. And as long as you continue to make the payments on that loan, which is the seller's loan, the lenders either don't know about it, don't care. And that's a way, of moving it and being able to offer something, on a property, a listing that's not selling, that a lot of other people maybe can't do. So it works out well. But as some people get nervous about that, like, well, wait a minute, if I give you my house and we do this wraparound mortgage, the thing is that gives the seller the first right to file a lien and foreclose. So the seller could actually foreclose before the first mortgage lender could ever foreclose.
Okay, so that means so this is a form of seller financings, but the seller does not make any money on it. They just have their loan paid.
Well, it depends on how it's negotiated, right? The seller could say, well, I've got $50,000 of equity in this house. I'm not going to walk away with nothing. Tell you what, we'll do the subject to financing. You take over my loan, right? We don't even ask their, and this is not something we do as a lender. I mean, it's just something we do as investors. We don't even ask their lender if it's okay for their permission. But say they've got $50,000 in equity. They say, okay, look, write me a check for $25,000 at closing, cash. We have the attorney record the wraparound mortgage, and then the seller at least walks out with something. And so that's how that they can make a little bit of money off a house that maybe won't sell.
But this is certainly not mainstream, because title company needs the primary loan to be in first lien position. So this is not for the public. This is not for the world.
Correct. Yeah, but it's becoming more and more prevalent now as we have houses that are sitting on the market that are not selling, that may have the 2.5% or 3% mortgage that, people got shocked when they got their insurance bill or they got their tax bill, or a combination of both. So even though that 2.5% is great, the other costs are.
Let's talk about some of these strategies, through either the media or people's individual social media accounts. You're hearing about, I know we're talking about one mechanism, the buy down, and we're going to talk about that. And I have a strategy that I've used with clients, and let's talk about that too. Now, when the rates initially popped up, there was this, it's kind of ironic, because there was an opportunity. Please describe the 3-2-1 buy down. And the irony is that was always available. Just people never utilized that approach because things were too damn good. So what is that 3-2-1 that, and how you can work with realtors on that?
Well, the 3-2-1, and the reason why people go, why weren't you doing that when rates were 3%? Because the costs for that product are generally borne by the seller. So when your house is selling within 30 minutes of a listing, the seller has no incentive to offer, a buy down or pay costs or, any of that sort of stuff. Now, when their houses are sitting on the market, an average of, say, 60 days or 75 days, when before it was 5, they have to have an incentive to be able to offer the buyers to do that. And so now the 3-2-1 buy down, and there's also a 2-1 buy down or 3-2-1. I mean, it's 6 1 half dozen the other. But now you at least have something to bring to the table to say, listen, the seller's willing to contribute towards, your buy down of your interest rate. And you can do that in one of two ways. You can do it with a 3-2-1 buy down. Let's say we're getting seller concessions of 3%, because the cost of doing a 3-2-1 buy down is about 3%. And conversely, the cost of buying down the rate, just a one-time buy down at 3%, buys you maybe 0.75% discount in rate. But the incentive is there now for the sellers, where it wasn't there before. If you think about it, how the market was so crazy. If you had gone in and made an offer when they're getting 15 other offers, 90% of them are cash, most of them are $100,000 or more above asking price, why would a seller would laugh you out the door? If you said, hey, and plus we want 3% closing costs concession from the seller, it would never have happened. So now it will happen, and it is happening quite, frequently.
So what, I mean, I understand that, but you mentioned seller's concession, which is a mechanism that maybe not every realtor is used to, especially if they're intoxicated from the last market,
Right.
and the buyers are not. So when there's a seller's concession, it's an agreement, but it requires a higher appraisal, correct? Let us know more about that, please.
No, the house still has to appraise. Well, from the buyer side, right? From the lender side, you can only purchase the house for the lower of the two, either the sales price or the appraised value. So if you're under contract for 300 and the sales, the appraisal comes in at 275, you're either paying the difference in cash or you're going back and renegotiating the contract. So
but to achieve the seller's concession, and let's call it 3%, the house is 300, you need to have a 309 value to truly achieve your goal of the seller contributing money that is not their own. It's pumped up legally and underwritten by the bank to allow the buyer to save those closing costs and borrow the entire figure. So you need a higher appraisal so it doesn't actually affect the seller.
Well, it's going to affect the seller. So it is not something where we need a higher appraisal at all. Like when the seller lists the house, they've got to, and I'm sure the listing agents, have to do a good job and say, listen, we're starting at this, but we need to be ready to drop and we'll make concessions and that sort of stuff. So, you have 3% is nothing. It's pennies, right? When you see prices dropping, daily by $50,000, $75,000 plus dollars, on these houses. But to ask for 3%, the seller say, okay, well, instead of, selling my house for $300,000, I'm selling it for, $291,000. Big deal, big difference, right?
So that's really the reverse. Yeah. Well, you're talking about, then let me introduce to you what the first description you have was a true seller's concession where the price is 300, then you maximize it at 309. And if the borrower is borrowing 80%, it's 80% of the 309. That's, in my sense and what's understood to be a seller's concession. What you're talking about is what I prefer, where if and when a seller, which is almost universally today, going to drop their initial asking price, you can attribute some of that to lower the buyer's interest rate to be more attractive, to be the sexiest house on the block, so that the realtor can utilize this mechanism with you and make the seller understand that they have the power to actually determine the rates and command the attention that the house deserves.
Agreed. Yeah, and I've had situations in the past where say somebody goes under contract for 300, and we get the appraisal back, and it comes back at 310. Then we can go back and say, hey, maybe you ought to go back and renegotiate and see if the seller will take that extra 10 grand and apply it towards your closing costs and prepaids after the fact. But it's very rare, it seems, for a house to come in above appraised value. Most of the time, the listing agents know
these days
this is the market value. They've done the comps. They know what it's going to come in at. The appraisers know, the game, and they see the appraisers. And it's important. The appraisers see the contract when the appraisal is ordered, so they know what this house is under contract for. And so most of the time, they're coming in right at value.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but let me ask you, what's the pitfall? I think I have one, but I want to hear what you think. What's the pitfall of the 3-2-1? Because isn't that temporary, and you're really not escaping the final rate, just a 36-month or 24-month break?
The pitfall can be, and it's important to understand, let's say we're starting with a 6% rate, right? We qualify, and it's not ideal. It's Fannie Mae, it's HUD, it's FHA for any lender. We qualify the borrower at what the actual market and final rate will be. So we're not saying we're going to do a 3-2-1 buy down. We're going to start at 3%, and that's what we're going to qualify at. That's what caused the catastrophe, a decade or so ago. But the pitfall can be where the buyer gets comfortable paying that particular payment for the first 1 or 2 years. And they're saying, okay, well, this is my payment. And all of a sudden they get that adjustment in year 2, and they get that adjustment again in year 3. And then the final adjustment back to the market rate, which they were qualified for at the time. Now, the other part of it could be, let's say that the buyer changes employment, or the buyer's income changes or expenses change. They say, wow, okay, my payment's only $1,265 a month. I can go buy that Mercedes electric car for, $800 or $900 a month. not taking into account that, that's right, my payment's going to change eventually. So that's the pitfall that I really see.
Right. So in some way, this loan is implicitly an adjustable rate, because it's fair to anticipate the taxes and insurance will go up. You're initially underwritten, and you know for a fact that the amount of money you're paying now will increase after 12, 24, 36 months. So you're basically entering some form of a gamble. Yes, you're qualified on the original rate, but you have three risks, which are, I think, real. You have the tax go up, the insurance goes up, and then your lifestyle goes up. You eat more sushi, you do more fun things, and then people are really, really rarely disciplined enough to save that aside for the payment coming up.
Oh, very true. Yeah, very true. Yeah. But here's the difference with the 3-2-1 buy down versus an adjustable. While it is adjustable, because by definition it's changing, the adjustments are predictable. In your loan documents, they say in black and white what your principal and interest is going to be in year 1, year 2, year 3, and then finally years 4 through 27. Whereas with an adjustable rate, you're subject to the market. You're subject to your index.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. I mean, it has the impact.
You know exactly what the payment's going to be. It's black and white. In years 5 or 6, my payment's going to be X. With an adjustable rate,
when you say payment, that only means the principal and interest that's found on the note. It does not mean all the other variables plus maybe your lifestyle uptick. So, I'm with you. Of course, I understand. However, that's why I think the other model we discussed, and I think let's go over it. Let's call it, I don't even have a name for it, the price reduction approach, where if you, instead of doing this possibly, cousin to the adjustable, if and when the seller reduces that price, which they will, look on MLS, which I do daily, when they reduce 5%, that means they're just basically throwing money in the sky, because that's not helping the seller, that's not helping the buyer. So if your bank would allow 4%, whatever the max is, or 5%, better than me, of that the buyer to receive that amount in closing cost contribution, if it's specifically earmarked for the rate, as you and I discussed, 4 or 5% of the reduction of the price was attributed or allocated to the price, the interest rate. Wouldn't that make more sense? So you have something that doesn't need a higher appraisal and won't jump up ever, because you're establishing the rate at the closing, right? So 4%, would that give you about what, 0.75% of a price of an interest rate reduction?
Yeah, the rule of thumb is 1 point in discount equals about 0.25% discount to the rate. So 4% would equal 1% in terms of rate discount.
Okay, so that means you're automatic.
I mean, to allocate those funds to specifically a rate buy down. But if the realtor, the listing agent, is smart, they would market it that way. Hey, this house is available with a 3.5% rate or a 3% discount off current market rates, that sort of thing.
Okay, so then to me, look at the opportunity here for lenders to working with realtors, and look at realtors working with people to form a team and be the team that can make a house much more desirable and much easier for the buyer to buy, and much more another reason why a listing agent would be sought after, as this agent has the secret magic wand, just by involving you, who's very, very familiar and capable of making this big difference in a lot of people's lives. Think about it. You're changing the seller, you're changing the buyer, you're changing the listing agent. This one mechanism, let's call it the 4-1. I'm going to make it called the 4-1. The 4-1 is a reduction which gets you 1% less, and that makes everyone look better down the road.
Yeah, just keep in mind, it depends on the down payment from the buyer. So there's a restriction as to how much the seller can contribute towards the buyer's cost, whether it's a rate buy down, et cetera. It doesn't matter whether it's buying down.
So what's 20%? Do you think 20% would qualify for the 4-1?
You can always get 3%, from the seller. but most people put down the minimum payment. I mean, it's 5%, especially in a declining market or depreciating market like now. They're putting down the minimum because if they expect the market to go down, why would I put 20% down, to save a couple $100 a month on mortgage insurance? Because if the market corrects and takes another 10 or 15% dive, that down payment, the cash that I just put down, has evaporated and it's gone. My equity is gone in that. But yeah,
Okay, so even,
I have to go back
even
and check
with,
the chart. I think you have to put 10% down or more to get above 3% seller concessions.
okay, so really, if a rule of thumb is 10% will get you 3%, and
Well,
20%.
any percent. You could do a first time home buyer program with 3% down, and you can still get 3% back from the seller in terms of a concession.
Wow. So basically, so if you really look at it, every property in the MLS is wasting a chance. Every seller selling is wasting a chance to make their house more desirable.
I would agree with that. And I have to add one point to what I just said. If the buyer is an FHA buyer and they're only going to put 3.5% down, you can get up to 6% concession from the seller, regardless of your down payment. And that's a major key with FHA.
But when you say concession, and I'm hearing the traditional uptick in the price has to appraise, the concession is different than a contribution, shall we say? So the concessions in your case, yeah.
No, it's the same thing. So if the seller says, let's say they've got an FHA buyer coming, and the FHA buyer can get up to 6% or whatever. Closing costs in the state of Florida run an average of about 3%, right? And that's not points in it. That's just taxes, document stamps, title costs, appraisals, surveys, that sort of stuff. It's 3%. How those concessions are applied makes no difference to what is allowed to be contributed. So if the seller can contribute, say 3%, it doesn't matter to whether it goes to a rate reduction or whether it goes to pay the buyer's closing costs. It doesn't matter. They don't have to specifically be allocated for one thing or the other to dictate the amount that the seller is allowed to contribute. So that's really up to the buyer and their mortgage professional. How do we best utilize this 3% we're going to get?
Right. When you say that the best use is all of it to points for, title bills one time, escrows are one time.
I would never advise. And it almost never works out to where it's worth paying. And I know you talked about this earlier, to do the one-time buy down on the rate reduction, because the amount of time that it takes you to recoup the cost of that point, so it's basically, it almost always works out to be, between 4 to 6 years. And most people are not going to live in a home or refinance or do something within 5 years. So the value is almost never in, buying that interest rate down, doing a one-time buy down, not a 3-2-1, but doing a one-time buy down. So, and it depends on the buyer's financial situation as well. You could have a buyer that's coming in that's scraping every penny that they have together, that they need that concession from the seller, or they're going to be broke after closing. Because certain loans, like FHA, they don't require you have anything left in the bank after you close. We know that's not reality, but it is how the system works. So that 10 grand that they're going to get from the seller, at that point, we would probably utilize it and apply it towards closing costs, so that the people have money to move and to paint, to have, rent a U-Haul, that sort of thing. So it all depends on the individual person's scenario. So.
Well, I think, this kind of conversation is so important. That's why it's on video. But I will tell you, let me hear what you think. There's no way these higher level, sophisticated type of arrangements or strategy is really talked about with the bulk of the lenders in connection with the realtors that they would like to work with. I mean, to me, this is next level. Do you agree? This is someplace that.
Yeah. I would definitely, and a lot of it comes from, Scott, is that those items and these strategies that we're talking about would be implemented by the listing agent. And the listing agents almost never work with lenders, right? They don't need the lender. They're selling the house. They don't care where the financing comes from.
Good point.
But if they would say, hey, I need to pair up with a lender, and maybe the lender's not going to get that deal because, they're bringing the buyers coming in from a different agent. But if the lender says, hey, take a look at our preferred lender or something like that, then it kind of, is sort of an incentive to do it. But there's very few relationships between listing agents and actual lenders unless the lenders are coming in more as a marketing partner or something like that.
No, I agree, but keep in mind,
there's no get approached to have these concepts introduced to them, because there's no real line of communication, or in many cases, listing agents like, well, why would I want to talk to a lender? It's
no, I agree, but hold on, everything's about relationships, as you well know, and it's not like a listing agent. We're not talking about Ford and Chevy here, or Coke and Pepsi. The listing agent in the morning is a buying agent in the afternoon. So there's no specific, license. They're the same thing. Today's Monday and tomorrow's Tuesday. So they have a buyer and a seller. So the fact is, and your point about a lender trying to reach into a deal, I know that's hard. I'm not saying the lender would try to get in that deal on Main Street. I'm saying that would create a relationship, because such a fantastic strategy that would be really, for the most part, implemented by the lender, who would collaborate with the listing agent to benefit the seller and then resultingly the buyer. So yes, there's no connection, but I'll tell you what, that might be even better, because there's no competition for their attention. They're just looking what could make them a better listing agent. So it would start day one of you working with agents who then, when they seek a listing, would have a reason why they're the most attractive, and then the seller would implement this strategy, and then their home is the most attractive. That's, to me, the chain.
Yes. Yep. And especially when it hits the MLS and that first line under broker remarks, or under the public remarks, could be something that this house is being offered with a reduced interest rate, 3% off of market. You can't really get into quoting specific rates because it changes daily, and you have to quote APR. And
right, I understand. I mean,
but if you put that in there, you're going to stand out on Realtor.com, on Zillow, on things that the public has, access to looking at, or to a buyer's agent that's looking on Flex or MLS.
Right, and I don't even think it could be. We wouldn't want to say the rates because they change at midnight, but it wouldn't necessarily be lower interest rate. It would be, lower monthly payment, something where, it might be a reason to act, until, let's say, March 1, we're going to offer this, and then we won't. And, compare, the rate on this property is much less. You could say if it's a 4-1 or 3-1, whatever that is, you could come with if you're in a property $400,000-$500,000 loan, you're talking about what? You're talking about $2,000 a year, $4,000 a year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. Well, can I give you some specifics? I did a little homework.
Please, I want to hear all about it.
All right. So what I did is, and excuse me for looking down, but I'm looking at my notes, on a 3-2-1 buy down, on a $300,000 loan amount, with a market rate, where say that average market rate is 6%. So with a 3-2-1 buy down, that first year, that payment is $1,265 a month. Of course, we're only talking about principal and interest, because that's all we have to deal with in this scenario. The difference between that and the 6%, if they had just bought the house, took a normal 6%, we're happy to get anything back from the seller. The difference in monthly payment is $534 a month.
Wow.
Over the first year, they save this is big. Over the first year, they save $6,408. In year 2, the principal and interest payment is $1,432, or a savings of $367 a month. And in year 2, they're saving $4,404 over the buyer that just went in and says, okay, I'll just take the market rate, and I didn't get any seller concessions. In the third year, the monthly principal and interest payment is $1,610. They're saving $189 a month, which translates to $2,268 a year. Here's the total. Now listen to this. So in the first 3 years of that buy down, that buyer who utilized those funds to pay for that buy down from the seller, of course, saved $13,080 in 3 years in interest alone. That's a lot of money. So if you do it as a one-time buy down, say you take the rate from, you paid that same 3 points, right? We're taking that same 3% from the seller, and we're applying it, and we're taking that rate from 6% down to 5.25%, right? Because remember, we said 1 point equals a 0.25 discount to the rate. So 3 points will buy you 3/4 of a discount to the interest rate. So then your payment is $1,657 a month, which basically is, and it's, without the buy down. So you're only saving $142 a month by doing that one-time buy down. And I know that's what you were talking about before. It's like, well, why not just do it, buy it at the table, and then you know what it is forever. Here's the thing. So at that $142, you're saving $142 a month. If you take that same savings of $142 a month and you divide it by what you would have saved, and this is important, Scott, over the 3 years, we said it was $13,080. It would take you 92 months, which is the same as 7.6 years, to realize the same amount of savings with that one-time buy down as you would with the 3-2-1 buy down. And on average, nobody stays in their house or doesn't do something with their mortgage or refinance or whatever for 7.6 years. The national average is between every 3 to 5 years, people are doing something with their mortgage. So you can see there's a huge difference there. And that's why the 3-2-1 buy down or the 2-1 buy down, whatever, is far superior to an initial buy down. And that's where the relationship in dealing with a smart and experienced mortgage lender that can show you the numbers in black and white is so important. Does that make sense?
That's interesting. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
When you think in 30 years, a lower rate is going to be much better, but no one's there for 30 years. So it's a practical consequence of what you're describing. The 3-2-1.
And nobody's there in their house that long, or, even if they are, they're going to do something with their mortgage. And, the general consensus is probably by sometime next year, rates will be back in the 5s. There'll be an opportunity to refinance somewhere between now and 4 years from now, and just maybe roll that whole thing over into, a fixed rate at 4.25, 4.75, whatever, and be done with it. But here's the cool part, right? So let's say that the seller says, okay, we're going to go ahead and contribute this, this $9,000 or this 3% on, the $300,000 loan amount. It's actually based off purchase price, but let's say somebody's putting a minimum payment down. Let's say you only get to year 2 and, rates drop to 4.5 and you want to just go ahead and refinance that thing. Whatever is left over in that account that was not used from the seller, let's say we started with $9,000 and there's $4,500 left in that account once you refinance it because you didn't go the full 4 years on the 3-2-1 buy down, you get that money back. So the buyer, who's then the mortgager, gets a check back for, say, the $2,000 or $2,500 that's actually left in that separate escrow account to pay the difference for the buy down. So it's a win-win.
I think I missed something. I missed something, Kevin. What account is that, and how's that created? I don't know about that account.
Okay. So when we do a buy down, let's say the cost of the buy down is 3%. Let's say it's a $300,000 purchase, and FHA 2.5%, 3.5% down, whatever. Let's say we're just going to work with a loan amount of $300,000. That $9,000, which is 3% of the 300, gets held in an escrow account by a lender like us. Or we say we sell the loan to Wells Fargo or someone like that. It's sitting there to pay the difference in mortgage interest each month for the buy down. And it gets ticked away at a little each month until at the end of the 3rd year, which is basically the first month of the 4th year, it's all gone. But if something happens with that loan between years 1 and years 3, whatever's left in that escrow balance goes back to the original buyer. So it's
now, is that your bank, or is that everywhere? I mean, you're telling me that there's an escrow account
everywhere. These 3-2-1 buy downs, unless you're a credit union or a local bank and you're portfolioing these loans, these buy down rules and these guidelines are all set by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and FHA. So they're all run the same way. But if we sell the loan, say we close the loan and 6 months later we sell it to Wells or Chase or Citi, it doesn't matter. That escrow account or that escrow balance travels with that loan. So it's always attached to that loan until it's completely, depleted. So
basically the bank,
You didn't know that, right?
No, I'm afraid to say this on camera. I didn't know that. So you're telling me that it's not as though the buyer just lucks out and gets a lower rate. You're saying the bank gets paid anyway, the difference during that period.
The seller, think of it like this. The seller is paying the discounted interest for the buyer, but they're basically paying it all at once at closing, and it's being placed into a trust or an escrow account. And then the lender gets paid that discounted rate a little bit each month. So the lender's getting paid the 6% interest no matter what, but they're just getting paid for the first 3 years a little bit at a time versus, getting all the 6% interest.
Okay. So what is not paid by the buyer during that interim period is paid by the seller from escrow throughout.
Correct, but the seller's not having to deal with the process.
No, I know, but I'm saying when I say from an escrow created. So there's money in the bullpen for that interim period, and that came from the seller's contribution.
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly right. And that's a part that a lot of people don't understand as well.
And
that money is the buyer's forever until it's depleted, which we know it's going to be depleted, at the end of 3 years. So it doesn't they refinance 3.5 years, that money doesn't just go away. They get a check back from the lender for $2,500, $3,000, whatever's in that account is theirs.
There is no way realtors know that, because I did not know that. I don't know if lawyers know that.
Well, because nobody has utilized this product in years. You haven't had to, right? With normal rates at 3 or 4%.
So then my question is, okay, thank you for that education. I mean, that means you could teach a lot of realtors this. So that means, let me take this the next step. That I would like to know from the rage, let's think, we're in February, so let's say October-ish, September-ish, when this became the rage and it was all over the world and we're talking about it, I would like to know how many people actually implemented this approach and that's, I'd love to know how many people bit and are using it.
Oh, in terms of that would be a great statistic to know. I'm not sure where you would find that out, but probably
because I think the banks would know, but it was such a sexy topic and such a great, piece of information. But I'd love to know the number that have used it and what were their benefits, what were their results. I mean, did it happen a lot?
Right. And I think part of the problem is that the term adjustable rate, and I see this on these Facebook discussions, and it really bothers me, but I bite my lip and I don't say anything, is the term adjustable rate has become toxic and poison because of what happened in, the crashes of 07 and 08. But it's a totally different product. It's a completely different product. It's not the old adjustable rates, that we used to have. And so people hear immediately, oh, no, it's an adjustable rate. No, we can't. That's terrible. Stay away from that. You don't want anything to do with that. Baloney. You just saved $13,000 in 3 years. For the average consumer, that's a lot of money. That's $4,500 a year, something like that. Think about what that buys. $4,500 a year. That's
what you're really saying is that means you don't pay. That means your taxes are paid for you. Your costs, your energy, your taxes. You're just getting that. You're saving those costs each year.
Yeah. That's a great way to look. I hadn't thought about it like that. So if my taxes go up, they're going to stay up. But if my taxes go up by $1,000 a month, or $1,000 or a couple $1,000 a year, it doesn't matter because in that first year I just saved $6,408. So if my taxes go up by $5,000 or $6,000, it's kind of a wash because I'm making up for it in the interest that I am not paying, but that the seller paid for me at closing on that loan.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you're just getting a free tax. Like the town said, don't pay us any taxes is kind of what it is.
Essentially. Yeah. Essentially.
And actually it's a double win because if you think about it, you're not paying it and you're getting a tax deduction for the money you'd actually paid.
Correct. That's very true. Yep. So people just need to get away from the stigma of an adjustable rate is a bad thing. Adjustable rate is not a bad thing. The most savvy investors in the world and in this country that buy investment properties or that are billionaires, that sort of thing, they're all using adjustable rate mortgages. It doesn't make sense to do a fixed rate mortgage when you can get a buy down from the seller or we can borrow the money. There's good debt and bad debt, right? If you can take your good debt and lower the cost of that good debt on an appreciating asset, why would you not do that?
Right. Well, you're talking about a high level of sophistication, like investors or like commercial entities, which is regrettably the person who buys a house, did they buy it, once every 7-10 years, and the realtors are not even not in a bad way. This is not their strength area. Their strength is all the services we provide, but it is not to connect you with an advanced financial transaction. It wouldn't even be maybe worth it for people to buy a house every 7 years.
No, but and again, and I don't blame realtors. I mean, it's not their job to be able to do all these calculations and run all these different scenarios and explain the benefits. That's our job. That's what we do. And most lenders, are probably not going to walk you through and offer you this as an option and explain to you, yeah, well, it's a discount rate. Why is it a better deal? And to give the math, like I just gave it to you, to show the savings in black and white. And what you just said, which is a great point. So if your taxes go up by $5,000, it doesn't really cost you anything because it's being paid for by the seller in the terms of, the buy down of the concession they just gave you.
And thank you for that. I mean, amazing information. I can say I learned at least something so far today. But, this brings me to my point. I'm on these daily micro rants against social media. Look what happened today. We met. You gave intense, sophisticated explanation for some very advanced financing. You explained it, and now you'll be able to deliver that. I don't want to say content because you're not an entertainer, your professional message to the people that could use it most. The contacts and clients that can hire you or refer you. Realtors too. They now have one or two strategies they didn't have. So in our, PlugIntro local business media platform, you can, as you did, explain something extremely well. And now we'll directly deliver it versus a social media where your competition is watching. The post is this big. It's written with no inflection, no energy, no trust, and your competition sees it, and you're competing against everyone else's attention. Like right now, we don't have any cats videos. We don't have any kind of beautiful sunsets on Facebook and other social media platforms. You're competing for the energy of people for a beautiful car, a party with your kids. I mean, your kids playing soccer is more interesting than this because that's what you want to see. That's what you share. But that's not going to buy your house.
Yeah, and no one's going to read posts about discount rates and all that sort of stuff. And
right,
because let's be honest, mortgages are boring. The math is boring. It's except for nerds like me that love it. That's what the average.
Yeah, it is boring.
Man.
I mean, but it's not boring. It's not boring. Gardens, pools, granite countertops, marble bathrooms. That's sexy. Right. Or, it's also interesting parties, networking events where people look great and they're having fun, and cocktails is more boring. I mean, much more is exciting, and this stuff's boring. So we need a way to offer value in addition to reaching the people who need it most. In addition, you're giving your realtors that you share this with the chance where they can promote their services, and we could collaborate in really gaining more market share and some attention, and be seen as the local leader and a resource and the go-to professional. So that's really what we did here. I'm happy, and I'm blown away. I really think we need to follow up on this. I think we need to specifically condense this and share this with agents that you think you'd like to either meet or thank.
I would love to do that, absolutely, and to create sort of a presentation on a flyer or something like that you can hand to them, or that they can look at online and say, okay, now I can see the numbers in black and white, because you and I can talk about it all day. When people see it,
some kind of
right,
or even bring a client in. I mean, imagine this. I mean, forget about you and me. We're not getting mortgages. But what about the people? If you brought in, and there was a seminar years ago that was really great in New York. I forgot what it was, but it did something revolutionary, which was bring people in. Bring the buyers and the sellers in, like a home buyer seminar thing, put them in a panel and say, you can have but I mean, really, that it was, I forgot the name. So what something want, how was your experience, and what could someone have done better? Now, if they're still in the market, they should know how to do this. Sellers should know how to make their house more attractive. Listing agents should want to be more attractive. Buyers should be drawn to the houses where they can save money, as we described. It's a win all around.
Yeah. I used to actually do that years ago. There was I think an organization called the National Home Buyers Association, whatever it was, but they would go around to and hotel rooms and, not hotel convention centers, and they would fill these things, hundreds and hundreds of people. And I would get up there and speak and kind of explain like whatever was the good topic, or they asked me to go over it at that time. And so I think that's kind of what you're talking about,
Yeah, well, just educating the public.
Yeah. It's true.
Okay,
But
and
you
what's
have
the
to
best?
find a way to, and I think this is a good medium to do it, because, you have to find a way to engage people in a boring topic. And mortgages, and what does everybody hate in high school? And like, they hate math. Oh, I hate math, and that's what this is all about. And point in fact, if you, I watch a lot of YouTube, and, if you look at the views on, say like a cat or something like that, that's got like 1.6 million views. But if you look at one of like a first-time home buyer seminar, or the latest mortgage this, and these guys that just are constantly putting out video after video after video, and it takes a lot of work to produce those videos, 300 views, 600 views. A year later they've got maybe 700 views. People don't watch that
Because
stuff.
I'll tell you why. Here's my view on that. Because they are doing this and they're following social media gurus to create content. And content is, to me, a Yankee game, a cool movie. That's entertainment. I don't believe in content. I believe if you would collaborate with a professional to gain an advantage, you would not have 600 views. You'd have 6,000, 60,000. And if you collaborate with a buyer or seller to get the best deal, they don't want information. They don't want content. They want what's in it for them, which means I'm going to save $13,000, or I can make my house more marketable. I think it has to always be positioned with someone's interests where I can gain. Because people do not extrapolate, oh, I saw Kevin's content. You think they could know what to do with it then? Or you think they could repeat it to a professional to implement the strategy? No way.
No way. Yeah.
So we have to lay it out for them. And don't even try to get as much attention as a cat with a spool of yarn. Forget it.
It's great. And it's true. It's true, and even I, as a mortgage professional, like, I'll look at this and I'm like, why is, I appreciate the effort, man, but why are you bothering? Dude,
I know. Plus
videos and
the one, let's say it was crazy. The bad news is if you click on it, so let's say you're clicking on some cool cars, or a few weeks ago, this is crazy, I clicked on a few Komodo dragons, and I'm getting video after video of dragons eating a whole deer in 2 gulps. Do I look? Of course you look. It's awesome. So, it's really like the whole odds are stacked against you, because stupid stuff that you are interested in is what you're going to see.
Right.
And that's competing for your attention.
And as humans, we're visual creatures. We learn by looking and observing and that sort of stuff. And, seeing some dude in front of a camera like me or you talking about math and all that, I'd rather watch a cat play with yarn, or an iguana eat a deer or something like that.
But if they understand, if they understand, hey, listen, you're a seller, you get multiple offers, which were gone, they're back. If you're a buyer, if you're smart, if you work with this agent combined with this lender, you can get a big savings. That's where, so that's what we'll do. So I appreciate it, Kevin. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way is by text or by phone, 561-310-9638, or you can go to KevynWagner.com. It's Kevin with a Y, as it appears on your screen, Wagner.com, and you can reach me by either one of those mediums.
Great. I really think we did a great job tonight. Thanks quite a bit.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I'm glad I was able to teach you something, man. See?
Yeah, I'm happy you did. I'm not too proud to say. If you're not learning every day, I don't know what you're doing.
Well, we talked about 2 things, right? You didn't know about the escrow balance that would be forwarded to the buyer. And we talked a little bit about the, what we call the subject to purchase option and wraparound mortgages. So, Two very, very good strategies for buyers, and two very good marketing strategies for listing agents to get their product moved.
And let's make sure we get this message to the right people, benefit everyone.
I agree.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Take care.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome, Scott. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.